The night split with silence before the storm, and the snow glistened under the pale moon. Ronan prowled the ridge, each breath bursting like smoke in the frozen air. His paws sank into the powder, and hunger gnawed at his ribs like teeth. He thought of Kieran, his brother, the shadow that waited in the dark valley below. Ronan said, "The blood will stain before morning, and it will be his or mine." The wind howled across the cliffs as though echoing his vow, and every tree bent beneath its weight. The pack stirred in the hollow, uneasy with the scent of conflict that clung to the air. Maeve, the fragile heart of the den, whimpered as she pressed close to the frozen ground. The land itself seemed to pause, holding its breath. In that silence, nature demanded a reckoning, and the snow knew it would drink life before dawn. The pack stirred uneasily in the hollow, their rest shattered by the storm's howl. Ronan circled them, his steps sharp and restless, as if the snow itself urged him forward. Maeve pressed closer to the earth, whimpering with a sound that tore like glass in the silence. Ronan said, "Fear is weakness, and weakness is blood." His words cut like fangs, though his eyes betrayed the weight of hunger and exhaustion. The wind carried the distant growl of Kieran, heavy and deliberate, echoing across the valley walls. The youngest of the pack shifted nervously, glancing to Ronan for protection, their loyalty uncertain. The trees bent harder, creaking like bones. In that frozen hollow, loyalty and survival tangled, and no bond felt unbreakable. The scent of blood lingered faint on the wind, old but sharp, and it drove Ronan toward the ridge's edge. He remembered hunts when hunger was shared, not wielded as a weapon. Kieran had walked beside him then, stronger, swifter, the favored son of the wild. Ronan whispered, "The snow remembers what we bury." The wind carried his voice into emptiness, and he wondered if Kieran heard it. Pack trailed behind him, wary, their paws dragging heavy through frost. Maeve looked back often, ears twitching, expecting betrayal at every step. The forest moaned as gusts tore through it, and the ice cracked like old bones. Each sound reminded Ronan that silence meant danger, and every shadow promised blood. The night grew heavier, and dawn promised no mercy. Darkness pressed closer as clouds swallowed the moon. Ronan's shadow stretched long, broken by snowdrifts that seemed like graves. Pack slowed, their breath sharp and ragged, mist clouding the frozen air. Maeve whimpered again, the sound of weakness piercing his thoughts. Ronan growled, "Quiet, or the valley will eat us alive." His voice cracked with more fear than rage. In the distance, Kieran's answering howl cut through the storm, deep and commanding, a promise of violence. The pack froze, caught between two forces they could not resist. Snow swept across their backs like cold fire, and the trees seemed to whisper with every shift of the wind. For Ronan, every heartbeat was a countdown, and the earth felt ready to split beneath him. The first flake of crimson broke the white when a rabbit, torn by the storm, fell lifeless at Ronan's feet. He stared, chest heaving, the smell of blood cutting through frost and silence alike. Hunger screamed in every stomach, but no wolf moved, their eyes locked on him. Ronan said, "The first drop belongs to the strongest." His voice was iron, though his chest trembled with doubt. Maeve whimpered, her gaze darting to the dark ridge where Kieran waited. Another howl rose, closer now, carrying hunger and defiance in equal measure. Snow drifted harder, the world narrowing to shadows, breath, and blood. Ronan stood over the fallen prey, yet the storm told him he did not own it. The blood had only just begun to stain the snow. The storm eased, leaving silence heavy as stone. Ronan led the pack into a shallow cave, its mouth carved in shadow and frost. The walls dripped with melting ice, each drop a cruel reminder of hunger. Maeve pressed close, her sides shivering as she buried her face against stone. Ronan said, "We endure, or we vanish." His words cut sharp, but his chest sagged with exhaustion. The youngest wolves whimpered, their ribs sharp beneath thinning fur, eyes wide with questions only he could answer. For a heartbeat, he felt their fragile hope weighing heavier than the snow outside. Kieran's howl rose again from the valley, closer now, steady and certain. Ronan's jaw clenched, not only against his rival, but against the fear that he might fail those who still trusted him. The cave grew warmer with the bodies pressed together, but warmth was no shield against hunger. Maeve lifted her head, her breath shallow, her eyes fixed on Ronan as if waiting for a promise. He turned away, ashamed of the silence that followed. Ronan whispered, "The snow gives nothing, yet it takes everything." His voice cracked like a branch breaking under ice. One of the younger wolves, Cormac, whimpered for food, his body trembling against Maeve's side. The sound pierced Ronan's chest, deeper than claws. He looked toward the cave's mouth where snow still fell in sheets, knowing his rival waited beyond the storm. Every heartbeat tethered him to the fragile lives behind him, and every howl from Kieran reminded him how easily they could be lost. Dawn threatened the horizon, though the sky remained bruised with storm clouds. The cave glowed faintly with the pale promise of day, yet Ronan's heart felt heavier than night. Maeve shifted closer, pressing her head against his shoulder. Her eyes, wide and pleading, held more weight than the growls of his brother. Ronan muttered, "If I fall, they all fall." His words were for himself, but Maeve heard them and whimpered softly, as though in reply. Outside, the trees cracked with frozen weight, and the distant sound of ravens rose sharp in the wind. The pack stirred, restless with fear and hunger, their gazes darting between leader and preyless world. Ronan stood at the edge of the cave, knowing the dawn brought not safety, but the moment to choose. The wind shifted, carrying the thick scent of prey, faint but real, and every wolf lifted their heads. Their hunger ignited like flame in dry grass. Ronan's ears twitched, his body alert as instinct surged forward. He turned back to the pack, meeting their desperate eyes, and felt the burden of their hope crush down. Ronan said, "Stay close. Hunger kills faster than claws if we scatter." His voice steadied, though fear coiled deep inside. Maeve's gaze lingered on him, fragile yet filled with trust that he did not deserve. Cormac whimpered again, this time with a flicker of eagerness rather than despair. Outside the cave, the snow glittered with the first weak light of day. Each shadow seemed alive, promising both salvation and death in a single breath. The pack moved from the cave, paws sinking deep into snow that swallowed sound. The forest stood like a wall of bone, its branches heavy with white. Ronan led them, his body taut, every sense reaching outward. He thought of Kieran's howl, and how close it had sounded. He whispered, "The snow will not hide us forever." His words fogged into the bitter air, a prayer as much as a warning. Maeve stumbled, her small frame sinking, and Ronan nudged her up with gentle strength. Behind them, Cormac pushed forward, teeth chattering, but determination bright in his eyes. The pack stretched thin, each step a battle between survival and collapse. The dawn grew brighter, but its light revealed more fear than hope. The forest tightened around them, every tree seeming to lean with menace. Snow deepened, swallowing the wolves' paws until their bodies trembled with the effort. Ronan pressed forward, each step a defiance of despair. Maeve stumbled often, her fragile frame unable to fight the weight of ice, and Cormac strained beside her, teeth chattering but resolve sharp. Ronan said, "Keep moving. To stop is to die." His voice cracked the silence, yet fear still gnawed. From behind came a rumble, a sound too deep to be wind. The growl of Kieran slithered through the trees, patient, unhurried. The pack froze, ears twisting, eyes wide. Ronan's heart pounded, every instinct screaming that danger was no longer waiting. It was hunting. The air thickened with menace, every sound sharp against silence. Ronan pushed the pack into a clearing where the snow glared brighter, reflecting the weak sun like shards of glass. He turned sharply, ears twitching, the echo of Kieran's growl following close. Maeve whimpered, her body sinking low, and Cormac's eyes darted wildly. Ronan muttered, "He hunts us now." The words landed heavy, pulling every wolf lower. Hunger burned in their bellies, but fear carved deeper wounds. In the tree line, shadows moved, silent, deliberate, circling like predators. Ronan steadied his breath, forcing strength into weakness, knowing if he faltered once, the pack would scatter and never rise again. A sudden gust tore through the clearing, scattering snow like ash. From its veil, a shape emerged. Kieran, his frame broad, his eyes alive with hunger and rage. The pack shuddered as his growl rolled across the ground. Ronan stepped forward, muscles taut, his scar burning in the cold air. Kieran snarled, teeth flashing, and the sound rooted Maeve to the earth. Ronan said, "This ground will not take me yet." The words burned, though fear burned deeper. Cormac whimpered but stayed close, defiance trembling through his small frame. The trees swayed violently as if to witness the inevitable clash. Nature itself pressed in, amplifying the tension, until the snow seemed to hum with dread. The clearing quaked with silence, broken only by growls and wind. Ronan advanced, lowering his head, his eyes never leaving Kieran's. The pack huddled behind, torn between fear and the instinct to follow strength. Kieran prowled closer, each step deliberate, his breath curling in thick clouds. Maeve whined, her body shrinking further into the snow. Ronan whispered, "Strength is all that matters now." His chest heaved, as though each word carried his last reserve. Cormac crouched low but refused to retreat, his gaze darting between brothers with trembling courage. Above them, a raven cried, circling like a dark omen. The forest grew still, the world narrowing to two wolves bound by blood and destined for violence. The wind stilled, as though the forest itself waited. Ronan lunged first, his paws tearing into snow, his snarl echoing like thunder. Kieran met him halfway, their bodies colliding with bone-shaking force. Snow exploded around them, painting the ground with fury. Maeve screamed, her cry high and sharp, while Cormac barked, his young voice breaking in fear and defiance. Ronan thought, "If I fall, the pack falls with me." His teeth snapped against Kieran's shoulder, tearing fur but drawing no surrender. Kieran answered with a savage twist, driving Ronan into the snow. The pack scattered but froze at the edges, helpless to intervene. In that moment, survival itself bared its teeth, and blood waited for its claim. The clash ended in a sudden break, both wolves circling, breath ragged, blood staining the snow beneath them. Ronan's scar bled fresh, crimson running against white. Kieran stepped back, eyes burning with something more than rage. He growled, but it was not just a challenge, it was desperation. Maeve crept closer, trembling, her whimper slicing through the storm. Ronan thought, "His strength hides hunger deeper than mine." Kieran's ribs showed faintly beneath his thick coat, his muscles taut yet trembling. Ronan said, "Even shadows starve." The words rang sharp, exposing truth. The pack stirred with confusion, torn between fear and pity. The forest around them groaned, wind-bending trees as if to bear witness to the revelation. Kieran's war was not only for dominance, but for survival of his own bloodline. The storm swelled, yet silence held between brothers. Kieran's growl cracked, carrying not just anger but grief. His eyes shifted, not on Ronan, but toward the distant ridge. Ronan followed his gaze, where faint cries rose through the wind. Small, helpless, unmistakably young. Ronan froze, realization cutting deeper than claws. Kieran was not only challenger but father, his fight driven by mouths waiting in the shadows. Ronan whispered, "Cubs." The word tore from his throat, heavier than blood. Maeve gasped softly, her ears flattening as truth burned into her. The pack shivered, the weight of their fear twisting into confusion. Nature revealed its cruel twist. Two brothers, both bound by hunger, but not for themselves. Survival had split them, but love for the innocent tethered them still. The revelation struck the pack like thunder. The younger wolves whimpered, ears twisting toward the distant cries. Ronan staggered, torn between rage and the echo of blood that bound them. Kieran snarled, but his body trembled, his breath faltering as hunger gnawed. Ronan said, "You fight for them." His voice cracked with both accusation and awe. Kieran bared his teeth, not in denial, but in defiance of weakness. The forest roared as wind tore down branches, snow collapsing in waves. Maeve crept forward, her voice a soft whine, pleading for peace where none could live. The pack shifted uneasily, their trust fraying like ice under thaw. Survival was no longer a single path, it was two, and both led through blood. The cries from the ridge sharpened, echoing through the valley with painful clarity. Ronan's heart twisted, the sound piercing his resolve. The pack glanced between him and Kieran, torn by the truth. Ronan growled, "Cubs will not shield you from the snow." His words tried to strike, but doubt fractured them. Kieran stepped closer, his voice a guttural snarl, but his eyes burned with something softer. Plea hidden beneath rage. Maeve pressed her body low, ears flat, her breath fast and shallow. Cormac barked, high-pitched, his fear spiraling. The snow thickened, swirling around them like judgment. Nature revealed its cruel edge. Survival demanded sacrifice, yet mercy clawed for space in a heart hardened by hunger. Both paths cut deep, and neither promised safety. The brothers lunged again, but their strikes carried more than dominance, they carried desperation. Ronan snapped at Kieran's throat, but his teeth hesitated, his chest heavy with the cries of unseen cubs. Kieran drove forward, but his strength faltered, every motion betraying exhaustion. The snow beneath them turned crimson again, but the fight felt hollow, stripped of certainty. Maeve wailed, her cry splitting the storm, a plea for survival over pride. The pack froze, paralyzed, their loyalty fractured between leader and truth. Ronan thought, "If I kill him, I kill them." The storm raged, as though the world itself demanded blood. Yet mercy whispered through the howl. For the first time, the snow carried not only hunger but doubt. The storm split open with violence, snow tearing sideways in a blinding sheet. Ronan lunged first, his body a blur of fury and fear. Kieran roared back, their collision shaking the ground like thunder. Teeth flashed, claws ripped, and the snow turned red beneath them. Maeve shrieked, her cry sharp as glass, while the pack scattered into a ragged circle. Ronan said, "This ends in blood." His words cracked between snarls, every breath a fight for dominance. Kieran snapped, his eyes wild with the hunger of a father, not just a rival. Each strike echoed the cruelty of nature. There was no mercy, only survival. The forest bent with the storm, and even the sky seemed to watch as blood decided fate. The clearing erupted with chaos. Ronan drove Kieran into the snow, his teeth sinking into his brother's shoulder, tearing fur and flesh. Blood sprayed hot against the ice. Kieran thrashed, his strength monstrous, his snarl vibrating like thunder. Maeve whimpered, her cries torn by the storm, while Cormac barked, his young voice cracked in terror. Ronan thought, "I cannot stop. If I pause, all is lost." His jaws tightened, but hesitation flared as the cub's distant cries pierced his rage. Kieran surged upward, slamming Ronan against the ground, his claws raking across Ronan's scar. The pack cried out, fear spiraling into frenzy. Every heartbeat became a war drum, and the snow drank every drop of their fury. The ground cracked with their struggle, snow collapsing into pits of red and white. Ronan broke free, gasping, his chest heaving as blood streaked his fur. Kieran circled, his body trembling, but his eyes unbroken. Maeve crept forward, her small frame shaking, her whimper cutting like a blade. Ronan growled, "You cannot break me." His voice was ragged, raw, but filled with fire. Kieran snapped back, his voice low, almost pleading, "Then you must kill me." The words burned sharper than any wound. The storm screamed around them, the trees swaying like witnesses, and the pack trembled in silence. Blood marked the ground, but the fight was not finished. It had only sharpened to its cruelest edge. Ronan lunged again, desperation burning in his veins. He struck Kieran's neck, jaws clamping hard, blood flooding the snow in a crimson wave. Kieran roared, thrashing violently, his strength ripping furrows through the ground. The pack howled in panic, the sound fractured by fear. Maeve collapsed, her small body trembling, her cries pleading for an end neither wolf could grant. Ronan thought, "The snow will remember this forever." Kieran staggered, his muscles failing, but his eyes still flared with fire. Their bodies locked, frozen in a war that was not only for dominance, but for survival of all who followed. The blizzard raged harder, erasing the world until only blood and breath remained. The storm broke for an instant, silence cutting through the chaos. Ronan and Kieran collapsed together, their chests heaving, blood staining their coats. The pack held its breath, their eyes wide, their bodies frozen. Ronan whispered, "One of us ends here." His voice trembled, not from weakness but from the truth of it. Kieran lifted his head slowly, his body shaking, his gaze blazing with both fury and sorrow. He lunged again, slower this time, his strength breaking, yet his will unbroken. Their bodies clashed once more, the final strike echoing like thunder. The snow split beneath them, crimson spreading wide, and the pack howled as nature claimed its peak of violence. The snow quieted, its fury broken, but the clearing lay heavy with blood. Ronan staggered upright, his body shaking, his scar torn open, crimson soaking his muzzle. Kieran lay half buried in snow, his chest heaving shallow, his eyes still burning though his body weakened. Maeve crept forward, her fragile steps leaving trembling tracks, her whimpers soft as falling frost. Ronan thought, "The storm has ended, but the cost remains." The pack circled, their eyes fixed on him, waiting for a truth none could deny. Ronan growled, not with rage but with exhaustion. Survival has chosen. The forest echoed with silence, heavy and eternal, as if even nature bent to witness the weight of the moment. Ronan stepped closer, his breath fogging heavy in the dawn light. Kieran's gaze locked with his, a fire still burning beneath pain. Maeve whimpered, her fragile body pressed low, her eyes torn between mercy and fear. The pack gathered tighter, their paws restless, their hunger gnawing, their loyalty uncertain. Ronan whispered, "If I end him, I end them." His voice cracked, heavy with doubt. Kieran bared his teeth weakly, a last spark of defiance or plea, impossible to tell. The snow beneath them glistened with blood, and the air trembled with silence. Nature demanded its toll, and Ronan stood at the edge of choice, a decision that would bind the pack to survival or to ruin. The cries of cubs rose faintly again from the ridge, carried sharp by the thinning storm. Ronan froze, the sound piercing deeper than wounds. Maeve lifted her head, her ears twitching, her gaze snapping toward the distant cries. The pack stirred uneasily, their hunger sharpened by the reminder of life beyond the clearing. Ronan muttered, "They wait for him." His chest sank with the truth. Kieran's eyes flickered, softened by that sound, his body trembling with both weakness and hope. Ronan lowered his head, torn between the call of blood and the weight of mercy. The forest stood still, every branch heavy with frost, every shadow pressing in. Fate balanced on the edge of one breath, one decision, one final strike or surrender. Ronan staggered forward, his paws dragging through crimson snow. Kieran growled weakly, but the sound carried no strength, only defiance fading into dusk. Ronan stood over him, his jaws parting, his breath spilling hot mist. Maeve cried softly, her body trembling, her eyes wide with terror. The pack pressed tighter, their hearts pounding with the weight of the moment. Ronan said, "The snow demands sacrifice." His voice trembled, torn by mercy. Kieran closed his eyes, his chest heaving once more, waiting for fate. The silence thickened, the storm gone, yet the world still roared in the space between life and death. Ronan's teeth hovered, the decision clawing at his soul. The silence shattered with Ronan's growl, but no bite followed. He stepped back, his chest heaving, his eyes hollow yet defiant. Kieran opened his eyes, confusion flashing within the pain. Maeve gasped, her small cry rising in the clearing like fragile glass. The pack murmured low, torn between loyalty and doubt. Ronan said, "Survival is not mine alone to claim." His voice echoed with finality, heavy as stone. The forest breathed again, the wind softening, snow drifting gently. Kieran's body sagged, his strength broken but his life spared. Blood soaked the ground, but mercy lingered, fragile and defiant against nature's law. The snow would remember both, the violence and the choice that defied it. Clearing lay quiet, the storm a memory, the snow heavy with blood and silence. Ronan stood tall, though his body trembled, his scar split open and crimson dripping. Kieran lay broken but breathing, his eyes fixed on the ridge where faint cub cries still carried. Maeve pressed low, her gaze shifting between brothers, her whimper fragile as ice breaking. Ronan whispered, "This night will not be forgotten." His words fell into the snow like stones. The pack circled closer, their eyes wide, their breaths shallow, loyalty suspended on the edge of fear and awe. The wind calmed, and the forest watched, as though nature itself waited for the echo of this choice to settle. The cries of the cubs rose stronger, piercing the dawn. Ronan lifted his head, his ears twitching toward the ridge. Kieran stirred faintly, his body trembling, his eyes pleading silently, though his jaws could not form words. Maeve gasped, her body pressing lower, as though sensing the weight of a new bond. Ronan growled, softer now. The snow has heard their voices. His chest rose heavy, with the burden of mercy. The pack looked at him, waiting, their loyalty shifting, torn by instinct and awe. The clearing stretched wide, blood and frost mingling, the first rays of sun glinting off crimson ice. It was not victory that bound them now, but survival shared with shadows of both blood and mercy. The pack moved uneasily, their bodies drawn toward Ronan, yet haunted by the cries echoing from beyond. Cormac barked once, sharp and uncertain, his small frame trembling with the weight of hunger. Ronan turned, his eyes sweeping across them, his breath fogging thick in the air. He said, "Survival is not mine alone. It is all of ours." His voice carried like a vow, sharp against silence. Maeve lifted her head, her gaze softening, as if hope stirred faintly within her frail frame. Kieran closed his eyes, his body sinking deeper into snow, but a faint growl of defiance lingered. The forest shifted, snow falling gently again, as though nature had exhaled at last. The first full light of dawn spilled across the clearing, touching blood, fur, and snow alike. Ronan lifted his head, the scar across his muzzle burning with memory. Maeve pressed close, her fragile body shivering, but her eyes steady. The pack shifted around him, their circle tightening, their eyes no longer only afraid but searching for direction. Ronan thought, the snow remembers both strength and mercy. His chest swelled with the weight of the moment, his breath ragged but firm. Kieran groaned, a low sound of both defeat and survival, his body refusing surrender even in ruin. The cries of cubs still echoed faintly, blending with the hush of wind. The forest had judged, and the pack awaited the echo of its law. The forest stilled one last time, the wind holding its breath. Ronan stepped into the center of the clearing, his body bloodied, his scar gleaming with dawn. The pack bowed their heads, a silent acknowledgement of survival's cruel crown. Maeve whimpered softly, her eyes locked on him, fragile but unbroken. Kieran stirred faintly, his breath shallow, his gaze fixed on the ridge where his cubs still cried. Ronan whispered, "The snow will carry our story until it melts." His voice was sharp, final, echoing into the silence. The forest answered only with stillness, eternal and cold. Blood stained the snow, and the dawn burned it bright, a memory carved forever into the heart of survival.